afternoon, and welcome to Indie Business Radio for Monday, July 13th, 2009. I'm your host, Donna Maria, and you have arrived at the one place where we empower you to enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way. I have two quick, exciting things to share with you this morning before we get to the main course with our guest, Juliette Powell. But I want to share with you that while it probably comes as big a surprise to you as it does to me, I spent 3 days last week at a monastery. No, I'm not entering a convent, but I did enjoy teaching some sisters one-on-one in a private social media class how to accomplish some of their unique community-based goals using digital technologies. If you've ever wondered what the monastic lifestyle is like, check out my July 11th, 2009 blog post at indiebusinessblog.com. And you can also enjoy my amazing photo album from my time there on the Facebook fan page at facebook.com/indiebusinessfans. I'm also starting a new way for you to connect with the show today. If you're listening to the show live at indiebusinessradio.com and would like to join the live chat, then click on the Saver Chat link and enter your Twitter name or your Facebook username and password combination to be entered into our live chat. We've got some people here already, and I'm excited to see that it's working. Saver Chat is a new service that makes connecting across Twitter and Facebook really easy and effective. And you know, we've all been trying to figure out how we can be efficient. Well, Saver Chat connects the two places where everyone is on Twitter and Facebook. It makes it easy to cross-connect using Saver Chat. So I'm putting the best digital technologies together to bring you the most knowledgeable small business experts on the planet. As always, when you tweet the show, please use the hashtag IB09. And speaking of digital technologies, I have a real treat for you today. Our guest is the author of the new book, 33 Million People in the Room, How to Create, Influence, and Run a Successful Business with Social Networking. I love the book title because who among us doesn't like the fact that through technology we really do have access to lots of people. Juliette Powell is her name, and she is a media entrepreneur and the co-founder of The Gathering Think Tank, an innovative forum that connects technology, media, entertainment, and business communities. She has assisted in the production of the world-renowned TED Conference. I love watching TED videos. And she is an accomplished member of the media, having worked with newsmakers like Nelson Mandela, Prince Charles, Sir Richard Branson, Steven Spielberg, and Tom Cruise. Juliette joins us today to talk about the 33 million people in the room and what we can do to connect with them. Welcome to Indie Business Radio, Juliette.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna Maria. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Now, I want to start with just a broad question, Juliette. You have a lot of media experience, and your book narrows all of your experiences and people you've worked with down to social media and social networking. So I want to start this question off with something that I've been wondering, and that is what is the difference between social networking and social media, if there is one?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, and in fact, I've been thinking about that for a while now, because when we talk about the Internet and how to find information, it's based on meta tagging most times. And so when you write a blog post, for example, and you're talking about social networking versus social media versus digital media, what are the real similarities and differences there? And I think that to be able to really utilize these technologies properly, you really do have to see what we're talking about. So social networking in general is really relating to either face-to-face networking in a conference setting or at a meetup, for example, and the online version of that would be utilizing platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn, for example, which are considered both social utilities and social networking sites. When we talk about social media, which is also somewhat interchangeable with digital media, then we're talking about a much larger set of tools. So essentially we're talking about the mechanisms through which just about anybody with access to a computer and the know-how can start peer producing their own content, for example, a blog post or a YouTube video, and can also start communicating that to their group of friends on Flickr, for example, or via email and can start distributing that content that they've created, again, through their network of friends, which can be found on social networking sites, but also in the less walled garden of the Internet overall. So social media and digital media really is a mechanism through which we can peer produce, communicate, and distribute messages. Social networking sites are distribution sites, but essentially what you're doing there is more likely just kind of passing on information. You're sharing information. You're not necessarily creating it there on the spot.
And I love that, the way you broke that down, and I think it's especially useful coming from you as a person with so much traditional media experience. For us as small business owners who typically have no media experience at all, is it a good way to think of it as social media being, as you said, something that you create, maybe sort of thinking of yourself as a little mini publisher, and then
Sure.
networking as where you said you're not really publishing anything unique to you or original to you, but you're more sharing?
Well, I think that you can produce some authentic, content on a social network, but very few people do. Most of the time they'll see something that somebody else posted and they'll move it along. They'll pass it along, or they'll give it a like, or they'll vote it up on Dig, for example, right? There are third-party applications that allow you to do that simultaneously on a social networking site as well as on your mobile phone, for example, or via your Twitter. But I think that the way that you said that it allows each and every one of us as business people to become our own publishers, that's where the real power is in digital media, is that you are effectively using the digital technology to create and shape your own story and distributing it at a very low barrier to entry. Again, if you have a computer and it has access to the Internet and you know how to create content and you know how to share it, then boom, you're off. You don't have to really hire anybody else unless you've begun to expand where you just don't have the time and the energy to do it anymore. But I think that it's interesting to see how people are, through the use of social networks, starting to realize that they too can create content, that blog post that they're sharing with their friends that came from the New York Times, for example, just echoes a conversation that you had, with some other friends, and that you too could have produced that blog post, or you too could have done a better job at uploading a YouTube video that was shot in your living room or in your neighborhood. So I love the fact that more and more people are realizing to what extent we've got this creative potential that can be leveraged for business, because the more people care about you and what you're doing and what you're sharing that adds value to their lives and their experiences, the more they're going to come back for more, and the more they're going to want to share it. And a lot of that sharing is done through social networks.
It's interesting, sort of dovetailing with your point about everyone's potential to use technology for this way. Your book, 33 Million People in the Room, coins a phrase called micro-celebrity. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that expression actually came up in a conversation that I had with Jimmy Wales. Jimmy Wales is the founder of Wikipedia and Wikia now, and he is probably the first micro-celebrity that I ever met, in that Jimmy in the web world is a giant, right? He's an icon. But to your average person that watches a lot of television or listens to the radio and even, uses email, they don't necessarily know Jimmy Wales' name. They might have heard of Wikipedia. They might even have been on the site or read an article, but they don't necessarily know who the founder is, just as many people know who the founders of Google are, even though, just about everybody on the planet at this point has tried Google at least once. And so this idea of being a celebrity within a niche, a very specialized niche, where people know your name beyond your circle of acquaintances and friends and business colleagues, where you start to gain a reputation in your industry, for example, that's when you start becoming famous, if you will. Sometimes it's famous in your school, famous in your town, famous in your industry, but once it starts going beyond the people that you know, and they're building buzz around your name, your brand, your company perhaps, that's when you have the potential of reaching micro-celebrity. When we talk about micro-celebrity in general, we're referring to the boost that you get when that buzz around you extends on the internet, where you might not be a big Hollywood celebrity, but again, that celebrity that you have in your school and your work and your little niche gets amplified because people are talking about you on the internet. Right, so you have the opportunity of reaching far more people, and you start gaining a name for yourself. And oftentimes brands are looking for those people that have been able to build buzz around their name, around their brand on sites like Twitter, for example. And I can give you a really concrete example. There's a lady by the name well, actually, maybe I shouldn't even give her name. I'll give her Twitter handle. She's called Savvy Auntie. And she's absolutely brilliant. She's a woman out of Montreal who comes from marketing. She recently celebrated her 40th birthday. So it's not like she was new to the world of business, but she was definitely new to the world of Twitter, and she was just building a brand called SavvyAuntie.com, which we all know how popular mommy blogs are. Well, she decided to build a site that was dedicated to the Savvy Auntie. So women who had good disposable income but didn't necessarily have children, but did have children in their lives that they wanted to spend money on. And so, Melanie, who runs Savvy Auntie, is absolutely brilliant at empowering women and making them feel special and making the kids in their lives feel special, to the point where she's got over 7,000 followers on Twitter. And she was approached by Disney when they were launching their box set for Pinocchio to start tweeting about Pinocchio and the place that character has in our lives growing up and those of the kids in our lives and so on and so forth. And it was this mass experiment where a huge brand like Disney decided to invest in a micro-celebrity. So again, most people have never heard of Savvy Auntie, never will hear of Savvy Auntie, but they've certainly heard of Pinocchio and Disney. And yet here was this woman who was authentically sharing information with an audience that fit into Disney's target market. And so they trusted, based on what they had seen of her micro-celebrity on the internet, the reputation that she had built for herself and for her company, and how well that dovetailed into what they were trying to accomplish with the new launch of Pinocchio. And so you've got a lot of concrete ideas and opportunities now to start using these social networks and this micro-celebrity in conjunction with big brands.
And that's a really good example, and she's been featured in lots of media for some of the pioneering work that she's done. Thank you for sharing Savvy Auntie with everyone. Juliette, we're going to take our first break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk with you about how you have seen some companies that are selling products as opposed to services. How are some companies that are selling products using some of these new technologies to get the word out? It's always such a challenge, and you've probably seen this in talking with people, particularly small business owners who are selling a product, and it's so challenging to tailor your blogs and your media outreach and your social networking activities to not sound salesy all the time. And like everything you're saying is buy my stuff, buy my stuff. Can we come back in a minute and talk with you about that?
I would love to. Thank you.
Great. Everyone, you are here at indiebusinessradio.com with me, your host, Donna Maria, and we're talking with Juliette Powell, the author of 33 Million People in the Room. Check her out on Twitter at Juliette Powell. There's some great information at the website that you can click through to learn more about her and some of the work that she's doing to spread the really good news about how we small business owners can use digital technologies to expand our sphere of influence. This is Indie Business Radio. We'll be right back.
Why is everyone listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com? Because it's the future of talk radio. Every day, more and more people are finding Internet radio as not just an alternative media, but as a replacement to traditional AM and FM broadcast stations. Internet radio offers a wider variety of programs, convenient on-demand listening that meets your schedule, and fewer commercial interruptions. and GlobalTalkRadio.com is already leading the way by matching this content with a highly targeted internet audience. GlobalTalkRadio.com offers its listeners one of the widest programming varieties on the internet, from business and finance to self-improvement, paranormal, health, literature, romance, politics, and more. There are also opportunities for prospective hosts who would like to host their own weekly or one-time talk shows. Want to learn more? Check us out at www.globaltalkradio.com and see the future of talk radio today.
Welcome back to Indie Business Radio. I'm excited to be here today with Juliette Powell, the author of 33 Million People in the Room, a fantastic book, which, by the way, you can get at her website, JuliettePowell.com. And before we took our first break, we were talking with Juliette about micro-celebrity, and she did such a great job of defining what that is and sort of empowering us to think about ourselves as able to create these little microcosms of niche communities where we're experts or well-known in what we do. Juliette, I want to ask you now, how do people that sell products, what are your tips for people that sell products to do that? Because it seems to me it's a little bit different when you're trying to sell a book or a magazine or your consulting services.
Well, I must say that I would never recommend that anybody use digital media or social networking to sell anything. I don't think that that's what it's about. In fact, my book really talks about the usage of these technologies to build your relationships, to build your networks, to build your social and your cultural capital. And the more that you do that, the more that you're recognized outside of your own circles and spheres of influence, the more people will come to you. So that it's not about pushing out your products and services, but rather about adding as much value as you possibly can to your community and to the communities at large so that they turn to you as the go-to person. And there's a huge difference there. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and I want to repeat that because I love it. Don't think of social media as something you can use to sell things. Think of it as something you can use to build your social capital and expand your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Okay, let's focus on that because so many people struggle with that transit because, Juliette, we are so used to traditional marketing. How do I sell this? What ad do I buy? What website do I join? How many comments do I have to leave at this blog in order for someone to notice me so I can sell my stuff? We sort of tend to think that way because that's the way the world used to be. So help us make the transition. How do you help people when you talk with them change that mindset from selling things to expanding your social capital, which ultimately results in new sales opportunities for you?
Well, I find it ironic, Donna Maria, that people ask me this because it's the equivalent of being raised in a household where you've got brothers and sisters and two parents, right? And you know that there's only a finite amount of time and energy that each one has to play and to give attention and to receive attention, along with all of the other expectations when it comes to growing up and being socialized in society and so on and so forth. And so if you really want somebody to give you attention, the best thing that you can possibly do is be there for them, is to be their confidant, to be their ear, when they're desperately looking for their socks, to be the person that helps them out. And not because you expect something in return, but because you know that it's just going to make your life smoother in that little household of yours. And the more you do this, the more that people come to rely on you as being that key person that everybody can always count on. And for whatever reason, when we get into the work world, oftentimes we forget about those basic human traits that we exhibit on a daily basis with the people that we care about. All of a sudden, we become managers, and it's our job to sell things and to market things. And these are no longer people; these are our clients and our customers. And for whatever reason, there's a detachment from the humanity that we all have towards ourselves as well as to each other, and we put on these masks, these corporate masks. And so most of the time, my job is really about, empowering people and giving them permission to drop the corporate mask and get back to what is it that you do when you need something from your wife or from your children or from your loved ones? How is it that you act when you're in a community setting and you really do want to build that community? And so we're talking about exactly the same traits. It's just about realizing or getting back to basics. Once again, getting back to the human factor. So when I talk about social capital, I purposefully went and got an expression that very few people use on their day-to-day basis because I knew that it would get their attention. But really all we're talking about is caring for the people in your life and making that mental leap of saying, even if I don't know these people that are potential customers, first and foremost, they're human beings. So how do I deal with human beings, not how do I deal with customers and clients? Do you see the nuance?
Absolutely. And, I meet so many small business owners who are really good at being who they are and building community, but somehow, as you say, it's kind of lost when this overwhelming amount of tasks gets loaded on to what we're doing. And you know what I find interesting, too, and you may have noticed this as well, Juliette, is that when people are starting a business and they're having fun and it's kind of not really a hobby per se, but it's more hobby-like. It's just fun. They don't have to deal with, all of the different nuances. They start out doing that, just sharing and helping people understand what they do and influencing people with the passion that they have for the environment or whatever their product deals with. And so have you noticed that? So we really have to intentionally go back to that mindset in order to really make the digital media work for us.
Yeah, I think that is exactly it. You hit it right on the head, Donna Maria. I mean, look at, for example, the founder of Zappos, right? Zappos shoes, or the founder of Threadless T-shirts, and I talk about them extensively in my book, where here are guys that aren't necessarily utilizing social networks to push the sales of their shoes or to push the sales of their T-shirts or even of their companies. What they're doing is they're sharing that entrepreneurial spirit. They're sharing that can-do headspace. And that's what you're reading. Those are the adventures that their followers are having the opportunity to experience thanks to these incredible leaders, because not everybody is suited to be an entrepreneur. But there's, at least in my mind, nothing more engaging than following the adventures, the trials, the tribulations of entrepreneurs that are doing things. And thanks to digital technology, you have the opportunity to get these ongoing updates on how it's done and what it feels like, so that if you are an entrepreneur, it gives you even more, it almost gives you more zest for life to know that you're not alone. That we know that it's a tough economy right now and people are losing their jobs left, right, and center. But here are these heroes that are just going for it no matter what. And it's their passion that's really transcending these status updates on Twitter and on Facebook, so that at every tweet, every status update, they're shaping their own story.
Yeah.
And you can do it too.
Yeah, but story, I love that term. Let's encourage anyone who's listening that they do have things to say. So many people say, no one's going to listen to me. Someone else is already tweeting about that. How am I going to, my little person just starting out on Twitter or just starting out in a social networking setting, how is what I have to say going to make any difference? How do people who are struggling with that question, how do they sort of rise to that occasion and know that they do have something to offer, Juliette?
Well, we all struggle with that. I think that I was very, very fortunate. When I started on Twitter, it was for two reasons. One, because I had 33 million people in the room coming out, and I talked about Twitter, and I had done so many interviews around these incredible entrepreneurs that were utilizing it so effectively, again, not to sell or market anything, but essentially to tell their story when they were nervous about getting up on stage, when they had succeeded in meeting the expectations of those that had invested, when they had failed to do exactly the same thing, and this connection on a very human level really comes through. But I must say that there was nothing more emotional for me than starting on Twitter live blogging for Huffington Post during the presidential inauguration. Because here you had this universal story that the world was following. And I was able to give my humble opinion, my, things that I overheard or feelings, emotions, bits of history that were related to me in real time. And because we were on the cover of Huffington Post, we were getting real-time feedback as well from millions and millions of people simultaneously as they were experiencing the inauguration via television, some in person, on the internet, so that it really gave me a sense of possibility of being part of the collective, but also being able to add my little unique voice to it, and that people were really finding value out of that. And I think that that's really the intention with which you have to start if you do want to be authentic, that it has to be not about, this is who I am and this is how great I am, but rather, this is my community. And from what I understand of my community, this is where potentially the value lies. And here are some ideas that I have that could potentially be great for the community. And what do you think, community? Maybe you have different ideas, and making sure that there is that sense of a dialogue, of a two-way conversation, that you're not just kind of sending stuff out there, that you're also replying to people. Replies are so important. Responding to direct messages is so important, so that it's not just me. It's we, the community, and maybe 1 in 15 tweets you're talking about yourself or your product or your service, that it really is about others and wanting to add value to that community. And don't forget, the more you do that, the more they're going to want to hear about you. They're going to be curious about you, about your job, about your company, about your brand, about your products, about your services, because you're adding value to their lives.
Those were such great tips. So maybe we can before we take our second break, kind of narrow it down to some steps that everybody can take. And I think from what you said that was so brilliant early on in this part of the conversation is, you said the first thing we can do is go back to the time in our lives before we had a business, before we have these kinds of responsibilities, and think about how we created community and interacted before any of this ever happened. Is that a good way to kind of think of it in your mind before you even get to the technology and become, involved in which social media we're talking about, but just going back in your mind to that point in time?
Yeah, and you know what? I don't even think that it's necessarily about having to go back in your mind, because there's still so many relationships that we have on a daily basis that have nothing to do with technology, right? It happens when you go to the grocery store. It happens, when you go to the dry cleaner, your favorite dry cleaner, who might charge a little bit more than the competition, but you know that you're always going to have that good feeling because you've been going to that dry cleaner for the last 10 years. And, they're also dry cleaning the clothes of your parents or of your family or whatever else, so that there's a sense of attachment when it comes to community, those good feelings. And that's what you need to get to in terms of your exchange, whether they're online or off. Those are the authentic ones. Those are the ones that you want to invest in.
I like the way you described it. It's not about me. It's about we.
Yeah, I think that that's a good one. And ironically, we in French is yes. So really that's what it's about. It's about saying yes to the community. And yes, I want to add value to this community. And yes, I am listening to what it is that you have to say in return as well. So yes, we in many different ways.
Now, Juliette, what do you think about, we've talked about the differences between social media and social networking. Do you think that every small business owner or every business owner in general has to have both? In other words, if I just want to join a certain number of communities and make a contribution, can I do that without also having something that would be my media outlet, like my blog or my newsletter? Is it possible to have one without the other effectively?
Well, I think that effectively is the key word in your question, because of course you can have as many social networking profiles as you'd like, and you can, decide that you don't want to create any original content whatsoever, and that's perfectly valid. But at the same time, you have to realize that you're not maximizing your energy or your time as a business owner. And that's key. Maybe you're just doing it for family, or maybe you're just doing it because it's an outlet, but might as well combine all that you are with all that you do. That's one of my fundamental rules in business to be happy and successful. It really has to be about aligning what I believe in with what I do. So that if I've chosen to build a business that I'm really, really passionate about, there is no 9 to 5. I'm constantly working, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like working necessarily, because I'm doing something that I truly love, that I'm passionate about, that I want to share with others, that I think is adding value to the world. And so if you really start with that kind of premise, then there is no real distinction between your family, your friends, and your business most of the time, because anybody can potentially be somebody that's a resource to help you build your business. It could be, a reference or a contact, or somebody who gives you the whatever you need to be able to create your products and services. And so there has to be in the back of your mind always this sense of possibility that different people serve multiple functions. And so I think that the same thing applies to social networking and social technology. The same thing can apply to multiple functions. If you're going to be on Facebook, why not open it up to the possibility that it can also help you in your business, that it's not just a social outlet, that at the same time, without any more energy, you can also start to build that social and cultural capital that we're talking about. And again, that's all about just aligning what you believe in with what you do.
Awesome. We're talking with Juliette Powell, the author of 33 Million People in the Room, How to Create, Influence, and Run a Successful Business with Social Networking. This is Indie Business Radio. We've got one more break. Don't touch that mouse. We'll be right back.
Want to stay on top of what's new in the radio industry? Sign up for a free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio, available exclusively to listeners of globaltalkradio.com, and find out what's new in the world of online radio. Listeners can find out about new shows and special guests. People with something special to offer can find out how to become a guest and how to prepare for an interview. And prospective hosts will find a valuable resource for everything from planning their new program to selecting topics and guests, recouping expenses by selling advertising, and more. Sign up today for your free subscription to the Future of Talk Radio by visiting www.globaltalkradio.com and learn about the future of talk radio today.
Welcome back to Indie Business Radio. We're here today with Juliette Powell, the author of 33 Million People in the Room, a fantastic book. Again, I've read through it. I have to spend more time reading through it because it's so full of information. I encourage you to visit JuliettePowell.com and also check out her blog at HuffingtonPost.com/Juliette-Powell. Some great information there, lots of insights from a person with some real significant and interesting traditional media experience. The book, again, is 33 Million People in the Room. So, Juliette, before we took our last break, we were talking about social media versus social networking, and you were sharing about the extreme overlap these days, the merger, shall we say, of our business lives and our personal lives. And we have been trained, have we not, to sort of see them as separate. You go to work, you leave your work at work, you come home, you alleviate your stress in the car listening to your favorite music, and then you're home and you can have fun with your family and friends. It's not that way anymore, is it?
No, and I must admit that I've never actually had that type of life. I kind of grew up in front of the camera, as well as producing television shows, while learning how to program computers and doing the entire, digital strategy at the same time. So my life has always been kind of an integration of what I did and what I was passionate about, and everything is a learning experience. I feel like, I'm a lifetime learner, And so every experience, every person that I meet is an opportunity to learn. And I really don't see the distinction between these learning opportunities, whether they're at work or at play or within family. Every moment, depending on how you look at it, is an opportunity to grow. And so this whole integration that many are attributing to younger generations, I don't necessarily think is about demographics. I think it's about psychographics. I think it's about a headspace. When you start looking at life as an ongoing opportunity, I think that you're much less cut off between your social and your work and your political life, that it's more of an integration. And again, I don't think that that's generational. I just think that it's a headspace.
Looking at life as an ongoing opportunity. And I think that attitude that you just described certainly does encourage all of us to embrace the kinds of technologies you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, agree. That's why, honestly, I look at who was the first person in my life that was close to me that was using social networks, and it was my mother. My mother who lives in a small town and didn't feel like she had a lot of affinity with, the people that were her age in the town, started, reading a few people's blogs, and they happened to be on the other side of the world, and then she would send emails, and next thing you know, they were on Facebook, and they were, sending each other messages that way and sharing photos. And I realized the potential of the technology then. So again, that really also gives me hope, especially as we look at, the difficulties in our economy right now, and the fact that we've got an aging population where many people that are losing their jobs right now are older. And because of the current credit crunch, and what's happened on Wall Street, there's a lot of fear out there. And yet I look at the technology and the ease of use, and that gives me a lot of hope. Because I think that for anybody who's got a little bit of time on their hands now where they didn't before, it's a magnificent opportunity, A, to connect with people who can become resources in finding other jobs, of perhaps becoming consultants, of building that company that you've always wanted to, but also that opportunity to connect with other human beings and get ideas. It's really about, the ability to execute on original ideas, and so many people are afraid of exploring their own ideas, that I think it's always a great idea to go out there and see that you're not alone. There's so many ideas that can be aggregated together so that all of a sudden you've got this organic team that forms. And these things only generally happen through social networking opportunities.
Success being the ability to execute on original ideas. I love that statement that you just shared. Thank you for that. Juliette, let's say we're getting started like you. Remember how green you were when you first saw your mom talking to other bloggers on the Internet?
Yes.
You probably remember some of the first questions you asked. Like, I remember the first time someone told me I needed to get a blog. Here's how shallow I was. I said, well, I don't like the way that word sounds. It just I help people sell beauty products. Why would I want to have a blog at my website? And I just, of course, this much time later, have certainly ditched that thinking. But I want to explore with you some of your best tips for people who are really just getting started. They've seen other people do this successfully, but they're trying to figure out how to roll up their sleeves. And do we stick our toe in the water, or do we jump in?
I think it really depends on why you're doing it in the first place, that you have to look at your own strengths. Are you somebody who is committed to writing a blog on a daily basis, or at least 2 or 3 times a week? Or are you more comfortable in front of the camera, for example? Maybe a video blog is more comfortable for you. Or maybe you just come up with great ideas on an ongoing basis throughout the day, but they're just short little snippets. So in that case, maybe Twitter is more effective for you, where you've only got 140 characters to express an idea or share something with someone. So I think that you really have to look at your own personality, your own style, and see what's going to work for you so that you can be consistent once you start, that you can continue to do it and start building that momentum. Because if you quit within a few months, then what's the point? You're never really going to be able to see what you might have been able to do. So you want to be able to choose something that works for you. Also, you have to start looking at, again, what is your business? And do you have any competition right now that is already using these social networking sites? And if so, how successful are they at it? Do you know where the people that might be interested in your products and services are living? In other words, are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter? Are they on some other site? Are they down in South America and maybe they're using Orchid? You really have to start paying attention and listening. I think if you want to do this for your business effectively, you have to listen to where those conversations are already happening and hopefully choose sites where A, the conversations are already happening, and B, where you can really maximize that opportunity to be effective so that, yes, you're going to, if you decide that you're going to want to tweet where you've got 140 characters or less, then you can then learn how to integrate those status updates via Twitter onto your Facebook page and onto your blog and onto your LinkedIn using third-party applications, but it's no more effort for you than just writing those ongoing 140-character updates. So you're looking for the easiest way to maximize your time, your energy, your strengths, and your business goals.
Time, energy, strength, and business goals. That's a nice capsulized list of things that we all have to look at to do this effectively, as you say. I hope everybody wrote that one down. And if you didn't, by the way, we've got downloads and streams available of our Indie Business Radio show. They are usually done in a couple of days, so you can come right back to Indie Business Radio and download the show to your iPod. You can stream it from your desktop. And guess what? As of this week, my designer tells me you can actually get my show on iTunes, and I'm very excited about that. Juliette, tell us what the feedback loop is. You talk about that in your book.
Well, a feedback loop is very simple. If you put out goodness, goodness comes back to you. I think that, there's a concept called paying it forward, so that even if you don't necessarily know who's benefiting you, if you turn around and take that good energy and do something nice for somebody that you've just met, then somehow you're paying it forward, so that there's a positive feedback loop that happens. And you see that a lot in viral video, for example. We talked about very briefly about the TED Talks videos, right? So you've got these 20-minute talks. They're usually chock full of brilliant ideas and new ways to think about the world, so that they're shared from, 2 people watch it and they share it with 2 more people, and it just keeps on going, and 2.5 years later you've got 50 million views of these TED Talks. Well, the idea there is that you might not know anything about astrobiology, but because this talk was recommended by people that you care about, you're going to pay particular attention, and you might learn something there, and it has even more value for you, and therefore you share it. So there's this positive feedback loop that occurs between people that share TED Talk videos. The same thing if people are getting a lot of value out of listening to this radio show, they're going to want to share it with their friends, so that there's a positive feedback loop around the content of your show, which affects your brand, it affects you as host, and so that there's goodness that keeps coming all around. The more people say good things about you, the more you make your guests feel comfortable, the more we're going to come back and want to share more with you and tell our friends about your show, and the more your listeners are going to want to, potentially talk about how great your show is in terms of giving them valid and important information for their own businesses. And that's what a positive feedback loop is. It also works in the negative. If you're not adding value and you're spreading lies and your content is derogatory towards others, then oftentimes you're going to see that spiraling out of control. And we see that a lot on sites like TMZ, where a fan will submit footage of a celebrity, and you just slowly see the celebrity, dipping more and more into, negative things that are said about them. And that's a negative feedback loop. And so you have to be aware that anything that's said on the Internet, whether it's text, video, voice, gets amplified all the more because people will hear it. And if there are good things around it, then that becomes a positive feedback loop. If there are negative things around it, then that's a negative feedback loop. But oftentimes for you regular folks, it all kind of balances out.
I like that. I like that summary that you just gave about the feedback loop. It can be negative or positive. So, Juliette, you know what's interesting about how we're communicating here is that we're really assuming the entire time that anybody with a business has moved beyond just having a website to embrace the kinds of principles that you're talking about. And that just seems like, it's like you were saying, like, when you blog. And, you know, and that's interesting to me because I'd like for you to comment on what you see in terms of opportunities for business owners where digital technologies are concerned. Do you see the digital technological landscape moving in particular directions, and how do you see from where you sit how we can put these things to work for us and really sort of skate to where the puck is going and not stay stuck in today?
Well, I think that that's a fantastic question. Honestly, I can only base myself on my own experience because my book came out just a few short months ago. And honestly, when my publisher, Financial Times Press, approached me, I think that they were thinking more of the middle manager of a company who isn't used to utilizing connected technology or social networking sites in terms of their planning. And the surprise that I got was, sure, those people really do seem to enjoy the book, but then you have the entrepreneurs kind of coming out and saying, hey, this is such an amazing opportunity for me, and I haven't seen anything like this in my industry. There's one young lady in particular that came to me, and she's a dentist, and she's 30 years old. She's got her own business. She's got a small clientele here in New York City where there's a lot of competition. And she was reading my book, and in particular the story of Gary Vaynerchuk, who started Wine Library TV, who's incredibly popular. He was just on the Jimmy Fallon show a couple of weeks ago because the power of his micro-celebrity, as we were talking about before. Most people will never know Gary Vaynerchuk, but in his wine world, he is a god. And so it's fascinating to see how this young dentist took his story and decided that she was going to do a video blog, that she had all of these tips that she normally gives her clients, that she was going to give to whomever wanted to watch on YouTube for free, just because it made her happy and she loved sharing. And, of course, in the back of her mind, she was also aware that anybody who didn't know about her, that enjoyed her tips, would probably look her up. And if they did live in the New York area and found value out of what she had said, that they'd want to meet her, that they'd probably, take her on as being the person to take care of their teeth because she had already shown her worth. And so it's stories like that really make me smile because I think that there are so many opportunities. This is such a nascent business opportunity where, yes, social networking has been around for a while, digital networking has been around for a while, but it hasn't necessarily been used for business until recently. And that's where you can really start to see, your followers grow. I started live blogging for the inauguration, so that was in January. And, I haven't been aggressively using Twitter or Facebook. I've just been telling small bits of stories about my adventures and meeting you, for example, and doing this radio interview or getting to tour around the world with my book and what that feels like to go into a small shop in Bondi Beach, Australia and see your book kind of thing. It's like this is one of the lifetime opportunities and experiences that you want to share. But, we are 6 months later and all of a sudden you find that you've got over 1,000 followers and you're thinking, wow, somebody's getting some value out of this, or else, I know it. They'd tell me, what are you talking about? Stop talking so much. We don't care. Or they just wouldn't follow you in the first place, right? And so you get these small spurts of positive reinforcement that allow you to move on. And another industry that's really surprised me is the American Teachers Association that had me speak a couple of months ago at their annual reunion, and they were saying that in most schools, Facebook and Twitter are banned, that you're not allowed to go in with your phones or your smartphones into class because it's considered to be disruptive. And yet here was the American Teachers Association asking me how to create a curriculum where they could, in fact, connect with their students using the very technologies that the kids care about, where they feel the most at home, and how you can start learning about geopolitics, for example, what's going on in Iran, and how you can start being more interested in building social and cultural capital, looking at what the Obama administration is doing using, digital technology. And so many great examples of co-creation and bonding using social technology in industries that traditionally would never, ever, ever touch them with a 10-foot pole. And yet you're seeing some incredible experimentations that will probably end up in my next book. I'm really impressed. And so it takes a special person to say, I'm going to be the innovator in my industry. I'm going to take a chance and see where it takes me. I mean, that's exactly how Twitter was invented. That's how Google was invented. And you could become the next leader in your industry.
You could become the next leader in your industry using digital technologies wisely. Juliette Powell, thank you so much for joining us today. Juliette is the author of 33 Million People in the Room. You can get the book and also find out more about Juliette at her website at juliettepowell.com and become one of her followers on Twitter and get some of those snippets of information. You can find out what it's like to share the information that she's sharing around the world and benefit from the tweets that she shares at juliettepowell.com. Very excited to have you on the show today, Juliette. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Donna Maria. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Next week, you guys, on July the 20th, I've got Adrian Grostic, the co-author of The Carrot Principle. He joins us to share how business owners' recognition of the efforts and achievements of others, including employees, can add to our bottom line. This is another iteration of what Juliette was talking about in terms of paying it forward and that feedback loop. Adrian's going to be here to share that with us. And then the week after that, on July 27th, I've got Professor Diane Halpern, co-author of Women at the Top, Powerful Leaders Tell Us Work and Family. We have got to get our fill of that. That's going to be July 27th. I'll see you next week for Adrian Grostic as my guest on Indie Business Radio. In the meantime, enjoy your life, build your business, and have your way.
You're listening to GlobalTalkRadio.com.